Hey guys, it's the second half of 2020 and as expected there has been a lot of class balances or rather changes that happened after all the succession classes has been released. And so we are back again to look on the overview of the classes in BDO after the storm of nerf and buff has subsided. Again, as usual, before we start, let me tell you that the changes happens pretty frequently. What looks best today may be nerf hard tomorrow. So better yet, especially if you're just starting in BDO, is to play the class that you enjoy the most. We do have some gameplay clips in this video for you to look into, and if you already have narrowed down the classes you want, then this video might help you to finally decide which class to pick. But again, the most important one is to play what you like, be it the class aesthetics or gameplay, as you will spend thousands of hours on that character, unless of course you decide to quit halfway. Without further ado, let's start with our first class, which is the Warrior. He is one of the very first class to ever grace Black Desert, using sword and shield as main weapon and a great sword in Awakening. The Warrior has been a very balanced class in most of his time, a jack of all trades, master of none. And when I say master of none, I don't mean in the mediocre way, but more of a middle to better class in each criteria, though not really being the top tier of each. For Awakening, its PvE clear speed is okay in low AP spots like Gahas and Fogans, and the recent buff makes him great again in high AP spots like Akman and Hystria. He also shines in 1 vs 1 PvP, which is very important for long grinding session in order to defend your spot, which happens a lot in the contested areas. While in large scale PvP, the removal of lingering SA hurts warriors a lot, making it a lot less tanky and forcing it to find other ways to engage the enemies. And to make it possible, you will need to learn a lot of its animation cancels and combo to be an effective class. Going with this succession, basically losing your great sword skills in favor of your main weapon, when succession was first released, the warrior immediately came out on top, and as expected, recent balances has kinda nerfed the succession capability while buffing its awakening form. He is still better in low AP spots compared to the awakened warrior due to its speed, but he's slower in high AP spots if an awakening warrior performs his animation cancels. They do have less skills, but those skills still do absurd amount of damage that gives the warrior a very easy time in grinding. At the same time, he still maintains his PvP advantage amongst other classes with his grab and block. This is true for both 1 vs 1 and large scale PvP, making Succession Warrior still an all-around great class, although a far cry from where he was during the start of the year. The next one we have is the Valkyrie. It is the female counterpart of the warrior and the paladin class equivalent in the world of Black Desert. A class composed of female warriors loyal to the cause of Elyon, which is the god of light and fire. They wield sword and shield as main weapon and a huge lance in Awakening. After a great nerf in stamina, the Valkyrie has been one of the worst grinder in low end PvE, with its very limited dash range. You cannot also sprint while wielding the lancea, forcing you to walk most of the time. She once got the moniker as the wheelchair class, although the recent minor buff on her makes her somewhat okay again. Also, once you get past on the initial stages of the game, then the Valkyrie shines in high AP spots, particularly in Skyria, Hystria, and Star's End, having huge burst damage and the ability to sidestep easily to get those sweet back attacks. In 1 vs 1 PvP, the Valkyrie is a pretty mediocre class. There has been no nerf on her recently, she actually even got some damage buff, but her big problem is her unprotected skills. She has some good outplay potential with forward guard on her initiation skills, but she lacked the protection on her damage dealing skill, making it very difficult to execute. She still does have a great block and an okay grab, helping her win some PvP encounters. In large scale PvP, don't get fooled with its large shield, as a Valkyrie is not really wanted as a tank class, but rather more on the supporting role. It has its own protected area and AoE heal skill, which is very important during initiation. The vacuum is also very useful, though very hard to hit, while its Black Spirit Rage gives multiple guarantee kills, that is if you don't die while casting it. Outside those, and the Valkyrie is pretty much useless, as its forward guard has no use against AoE skills thrown by other classes. She is better more on the backline and the sideline while avoiding the main forces of the enemy guild. But again, the support skills makes her a very wanted class for node wars and siege wars. Going now with the succession update, and you will now have the Valkyrie discard her lance and continue the teaching of the Church of Elyon. She is actually called as the Paladin class in the mobile version, which offers pretty consistent lore with the PC counterpart. Anyway, at the moment, the Succession form of the Valkyrie offers better performance in most area of the game. She's still bad in low-end spots due to her very limited movement skills, but her performance in high-end spots are great. Not to mention, she's pretty simple to use and have lot of sustain that you won't need a single potion as long as you have the recommended DP on that area. This Succession also offers better performance in 1 vs 1, as she has better protection on her damage dealing skill, all the while offering CC effects like Bound and Knockdown. While in large scale, she does lose her vacuum support skill and the Awakening ult, but she still have the PA and heal, which is always in demand. She can also be a bruiser as shield throw is somewhat medium range and has a great frontal guard to boot. She's a lot easier to play compared to Awakening form and offers great performance whatever you do. Striker, as the name implies, is a brawler type character in pre-Awakening, which gains the ability to summon clones to fight alongside him during Awakening. In low AP spots, he is a pretty good class with good dashes to run from pack to pack. High-end spots however, and he is pretty mediocre. It has some burst damage but can't really sustain it for much long. In small scale PvP, the Striker is a good dueler. The dashes makes him able to move in and out of combat and pretty much attack in different directions in a very short time. It also has both grab and iframes, which is pretty much all you need in order to dominate your opponents. In large scale war, even if the Striker can still tank the AoE from the witches and wizards, but he won't really last long in the front lines. Good thing he has the movement to position himself in order to effectively use his skills, while its Black Spirit Rage gives tons of damage while being invincible himself. The Striker is a pretty newbie friendly class which kinda falls off as you progress. This Succession Striker disregards his newfound powers in favor of the teaching of his master from Hasu Kingdom. Using his main weapon, the Striker now deals a lot more damage in PvE with its charged Hadouken, letting him farm faster in high-end spots while not sacrificing anything in low-end PvE. However, the main complaint with this Succession skills is that it removed much of the Striker's CC kit on its pre-Awakening form, rendering him very bad in any kind of PvP. As a result, many only gets into Succession while grinding and go back to Awakening during PvP. Some even purposely not get some of the Succession skills in order to retain the flows and CC on its original form, which is kinda a big loss on damage for the Succession Striker. The Succession offers a very combo heavy class, which is a lot of fun to play in PvE but very difficult to use in PvP. Now in its female counterpart, the Mystic. Again, another brawler class with lower burst damage but way more tanky and have much more CC skills. While the Striker has a fire element design, the Mystic on the other hand has water and can and will literally throw water dragon towards her enemies. She is currently one of the best PvE classes in the game, be it in low AP areas or high AP areas. She has dashes that can easily outpace other classes, except Musa and Maehwa of course, and even though she has no burst damage dealing skills, but the consistent DPS melt enemies in spots like Akman and Hystria. In small scale PvP, the Mystic is one of the top dueler. Her low damage is offset by its continuous knockdowns and making it very annoying to go against with. Her skill kit is to literally CC the enemies till Kingdom Come, while having a grab to go against super armor characters. In large scale PvP, the Mystic plays more on the supporting side with its vacuum plus slow. She won't really last long in the front lines, so it's better to pick off enemies from the sidelines and play what she's known best, which is to knock down enemies and just be annoying. Play the mental game, that is. Moving on in the Succession form, much like the Striker, the Mystic lost most of her utility skills in favor of more damage, which is always welcome in grinding in high AP spots, and with recent adjustment and flash step, solves her movement capability, making her on par with her Awakening form in low AP spots. She basically has full martial spirit point all the time in PvE, giving her maximum damage potential, but at the cost of amazing sustain and heal in Awakening. The problem with the Succession Mystic is when it comes to PvP. Pretty much like Succession Striker, the Mystic's additional damage cannot compensate with the loss of the awesome CC skills and sustain on its Awakening form. And even if she's a combo based class, her skill does not flow as good. Also, compared to the monster's AI, it is very difficult to keep her martial spirit buff all the time, as it's not as easy hitting an actual player. She's still a great dueler in her own right, but she falls off sharply when facing a group of players. Now to our first magic class, which is the Wizard. Uses Staff and Dagger in Pre-Awakening, and Igadur Sphera in Awakening, which gives him an aesthetic similar to Invoker in Dota 2. Like witches, the Wizard can control all the elements on Pre-Awakening, but will later lean on fire and water to do his bidding. The Wizard is an amazing class in low-end PvE, making it the best class during early days of VDO. It moves fast with its teleport, while the Awakening kit attack a huge AoE in front and or around him, clearing mobs very fast. Sadly, it's not the same on high-end spot, as he really cannot sustain much of his damage. Their AP scaling is also not that good, which makes it worse for high-end, though better at earlier levels. 1 vs 1, Witchards are simply known to be weaker than other classes. Yes, they do have some grab skill, but it's too slow to be reliable. Paired it with semi-close range attacks, and it's pretty much difficult to avoid being hit yourself. In large-scale war however, then it is also a very sought-after class, just like the Valkyrie and Witch due to its protective area and AoE heal skill. The Pre-Awakening stance is also range, making it a little bit safer to attack your enemies with your bomb fireball not rooting you on the ground. The succession path helps the Wizard maintain the caster type feels of the class, which was his original design. At the moment, he is such an amazing class with some of the best passives in the game. The Wizard still retains its PvE advantage in low-end spots while becoming even better in high-end areas with larger damage compared to his Awakening form. He is particularly good in Akman and can start grinding there in lower AP just like a Guardian. In 1 vs 1, I'd say he is already a pretty good class, far from the best but definitely better than its Awakening stance. In large-scale war, and here we see the Succession Wizard even go far above the rest of the classes. His split teleport makes him the best nuker in the game and can go in and out without a scratch. Not to mention that he still retains his protective area and heals, making him your best support and nuker all at the same time. I can give him a rating of 6 to be honest. That is just how good he is, and maybe a little bit broken when it comes to group PvP. The Witch is another magic class user in BDO, which basically has the same skill set with the Wizard in Pre-Awakening. She is a young prodigy of magic, having an affinity with lightning and earth, which is her main element during Awakening while using the Sphera weapon. Like Wizard, Witches are a great grinder in low AP spots, but she fares better than her male counterpart in higher AP areas. In 1 vs 1, again, like Wizard, she is not that good due to being stuck in place while casting her skill. She does have some protections, debuff, and good damage, but it's mostly useless in front of classes that can grab. There are good witches who can work around these grabs, but most of the time, it's just a difficult matchup. Against grabless classes however, and she fares way better and can utilize her AoE and damage well enough to win. In large scale, and as usual, being a class with the protective area skill, and she's immediately one of the most sought after. Amidst the chaos of war, she can most likely unleash her power most of the time without the need to worry so much on classes that might grab her. She's been one of the best in war since her release and continue to do so until today. Going with the Witch's Succession, and you will have her back again holding the staff and dagger to beat her enemies. She is most of the time being compared to the Succession Wizard, and without the split teleport and the access to the bomb fireball, and she is definitely weaker than her male counterpart. However, in PvE, and those things won't really matter that much. She's still a great grinder in both low-end and high-end areas, and with enough AP, can start doing better than her Awakening form when grinding places like Hystria. The problem starts in PvP, as her not so fluid movement makes her not so ideal in 1 vs 1 and might be the worst class next to Shai in dueling. She still needs to cast in order to release her skill, and even though she can move while doing so, it is just not as great as the Wizard's passive. And the time spent in casting is more than enough time for an enemy to go in for the kill or inflict CC. In large scale however, and all this does not matter. She may not be as good as the wizard, but she still has the damage, the AoE, and the support to very useful against group fight. Witches and wizards are core in group PvP, and guilds will accept these classes because of their great utility. One thing to note however that for most succession classes, and very prominently in witches and wizard, that it needs a lot more skill points in order to be effective, and with less than 1.5k skill points, then it's most likely recommended to stick to Awakening for a moment, as you will need a lot of your base skills in order for succession to be effective. The Archer is the true range class in BDO. He is under Elven Descent, using crossbow for faster attacks and a great bow for sniping. Unlike other classes, the Archer basically can wield both weapon and the onset, but most of the great bow skills and damage are locked up until you finish its Awakening quest. It is a great farmer in low-end PvE, killing enemies from miles away, and still one of the top performers in high-end spots, but may have trouble if you can't kill mobs fast enough as he's very squishy. In 1 vs 1 PvP, the buff on the Archer makes him pretty good. He has a huge range advantage and has the capability to keep the advantage, utilizing his skills to widen the distance between his enemy. He can also fight in melee range with his main hand weapon, but it's honestly not just as good and effective as just pummeling enemies from afar. In large scale PvP, and he is again a top fragger, the range advantage gives him the ability to hide behind her allies and basically pummel enemies with barrage of attacks while being safe themselves. Much of their skill also has crowd control effect and is simply devastating to unleash in huge group of enemies. Archers are literally the glass cannon with a job to deal as much damage as possible to as many enemies as possible. He's also pretty easy to play with a very simple gameplay that is to keep the distance from your enemies. There is no succession path for the Archer as again, he already got his Awakening weapon at the very start of the game. Moving on to its female counterpart, which is the Ranger. She is one of the very first class revealed for Black Desert and the first Elven race we were able to play. She wields bow and dagger as main weapon and a dual dagger called the Camasylvian Sword in Awakening. In Awakening, the Ranger is a great class in low AP spots. They do have some mana issues and will chug mana potions a lot, but they are still one of the faster classes out there and can move in between group of mobs very fast. In high-end PvE, the Ranger is still a decent class. It's far from being the best, but can manage on its own. They just really lack the sustain needed for long grinding sessions. Going now with PvP, 1 vs 1 and the Ranger is an above average class. It has the ability to CC from afar using her bow, and dash in and do huge damage like an assassin using her Awakening kit. She also has a grab skill which is always a bonus for 1 vs 1. In large scale PvP, the Ranger is not really sought after. She usually uses her bow in load wars in order to be safe, but her damage really comes more with her Awakening kit, which is very dangerous to use in a group of people as she is very squishy. She better performs in role like an assassin to catch those people from the sidelines while using bow to try and deal a little damage and crowd control to the main group of enemies. Her role has changed though with the Succession update, making her from a well-rounded class to a glass cannon similar to Archer. The Succession Ranger is one of the better classes during the start of the Succession update but has been nerfed to the ground. They have less protection and lost their grab in exchange to pure range damage. As a result, they became a faster grinder in PvE, both in low-end spots and high-end spots, but she simply excels more in low AP spots as she can melt them from afar similar to the Archer. A main problem however is that a slight inclination on the ground can result to dealing no damage at all on some of her skill, which is very annoying. In return, since she lost her grab, her 1 vs 1 PvP capability has been reduced greatly. She also no longer have that much damage to snipe people from afar, but the biggest problem she has is on its stamina, which results to the Ranger not being able to run away at will. She also no longer have protection on its skills, which means a death sentence when an enemy is near. In Node War, again, similar to its male counterpart, she became a glass cannon and has a job to dish out huge number of damage to main group of opponents. They don't quite have the range of an archer, but they have the better AoE, which balances that one out. As long as she keeps her distance, then she can dish out that damage, but can die very fast if ever a class like Ninja comes close. Sadly, the Succession Ranger is one of the hardest hit class post-Succession nerf, and is only better in low-end PvE compared to her Awakening form. Up next, we have the Dark Knight, the third and final Elven class we have so far in BDO. The Dark Knight has once been the most OP class during release, but has since encountered nerf after nerf, resulting to her falling from grace. She uses a Krieg Macer as main weapon, which is basically a long single-edged sword, while having a Verdiant in Awakening, which is a gloves capable to summon and levitate different swords and daggers. She is a very mobile class and capable of dealing both range and melee damage. In low-end PvE, the Dark Knight excels with dashes that lets her move and clear a group of mobs at the same time. Like her sister the Ranger, the only thing keeping the Dark Knight from top is that she consumes a lot of blue potions to keep up with her MP consumption. In high-end spots however, and she is pretty mediocre, and will require a lot more AP to kill a pack of mobs, and at the same time will also be needing quite more DP in order not to die. In PvP, she might have good mobility and iframes, but her CC are slow and mostly unprotected, while having no grab to tap it all. She is currently just average tier in 1 vs 1, and might just slightly be better compared to Witchards. Large Scale on the other hand, and the DK does have a spot like all other range capable units. She is more like a bomber and can deal some support damage from the sidelines towards the main enemy group, but that's about it. She can help trying to catch running targets, but she can't really do 1 vs 1 well, so she will need help in picking up fights with stray enemies. Now going with the Dark Knight Succession, and by the looks of it, she's a lot better than her Awakening form. She might fall a bit slower in low-end areas after losing great mobility skills from her Awakening kit, but she absolutely nails it in high AP areas with huge damage and great iframes. She is also a very good dueler with good outplay potential, but thus needs understanding on how the class works as she is a little bit slow on using her skill. But again, the damage is amazing and have little gaps on her protection. She also has a very different role in Node Wars as she no longer have her range attacks to keep her safe. She will need to engage now in melee range, which is not really ideal as DKs are very squishy. However, she does have great damage and crowd control effects, which if placed and timed properly, may enable the DK to get some kills. The problem now is on how to get out after engaging, and that will depend greatly on the player to utilize her other iframes. Now on to our next class, which is the Tamer. She is once the only class to be able to have a summon before Witchards got their Awakening Elementals, and the youngest looking class before Shai arrived. She is a melee assassin that deals magic damage, with her short sword as main weapon and a celestial bow staff in Awakening. The Tamers are known to have their summon Heilang, which is a huge spirit wolf to help her in battle. This pet wolf has more utility skills compared to the elementals of the Witchards, with the AoE stun ability and even act as a mount if needed. She is slightly above average in low AP spots with enough mobility to move in between packs of enemies, but will struggle a bit in high-end areas as she needs a little bit more work in order to clear a group of enemies while being squishy herself. In 1 vs 1 PvP however, Tamer hands down is one of the top tier class, with iframes to dodge attacks and the quickest grab to ensure CC. The pet is also very annoying with random CC being applied to your enemy, making the Tamer a very difficult class to fight 1 vs 1. On the other hand, for large-scale PvP, and the Tamer falls short to around average. She is an assassin, which as usual, prefers to be on the sidelines picking up random fights. But she do have one of the best rage skills, which can basically gives multiple guarantee kills from time to time. Talking about the Tamer Succession, you will lose your Q buff and iframes, but will keep your grab and pet. She got a lot easier time in grinding in both low AP and high AP spots due to her damage, but she came out worse in any form of PvP with the lack of finesse compared to her Awakening form. Still, a great dueler though, and very fun to play if you want to PvP, but losing the gap closer needed to get those grabs surely hurt a lot. same is true to Node Wars, and losing her 100% is another bad news. But overall, her role still does not change. She's still an assassin that go in the sideline and pick out strugglers. Up next, we have the Shai, which is a unique race and class in Black Desert. It is what many people call as the lolly race, easily replacing the Tamers in that title. This is also an experimental class for Pearl Abyss, giving Shai the unique true support role, being able to start as a professional in alchemy and gathering, having a boost on life skills XP, increased weight, and higher base HP, making her basically the most ideal life skill alt. The downside, however, is its reduced PvP damage, making Shai horrible in defending spot. She basically can't defend spot at all, unless you outgear your enemies so much that they can kill you. Still, not being killed is different from defending your spot. Anyway, in low end PvE, the Shai is below average. Its boomerang does huge range damage, but the AoE is not so good. She also has a blind spot in front of her, as the boomerang attacks in a circular path most of the time. Not to mention that Shai is pretty clunky in dashing in between packs of enemies, which I really hate a lot when grinding for long hours. In high-end PvE, however, the Shai is surprisingly a great class. She deals huge damage and her supporting skill helps sustain her grinding. High-end spots also requires less dashing around, removing that clunky dash problem that she has. Now, as mentioned earlier, Shai is definitely the worst class in 1 vs 1, and worst is simply an understatement. However, in large-scale PvP, the Shai is very in demand. Like the bards in other games, the Shai multiplies the battle capabilities of each player. You can heal, you can buff them with health regen, or give them more attack speed. You won't deal much damage, but being naturally tanky lets you able to stay in the battlefield and support your allies for a long time. You won't get kills, but she is a fantastic class and a true support class in BDO. The next class we have is the Lahn, a class from the far eastern Hasu Kingdom, using Crescent Pendulum and Noble Sword as main weapon, and a Crimson Glaives in Awakening. She has taken an inspiration from Blade and Soul game with the ability to glide, and is currently one of the best duelers out there. In low-end PvE, the Lahn is an excellent class which has the mobility to come in and delete enemies in a single skill, then move into the next pack and use another skill. In high-end spots, the Lahn is still a great class to have with her low cooldown high damage skill that heals her at the same time, making it less reliant to potion. She can also easily sidestep behind her enemies and deal those sweet back attacks all day long. In PvP, the Lahn is top class in 1 vs 1 with a simple grab damage combo as her trademark. Her medium range grab is definitely one of the best in-game and one of the hardest to dodge, while she can just fly out if ever it fails. If she has her Black Spirit Rage available, then the grab damage combo is pretty much a guarantee kill already. In large-scale PvP, like other assassin type classes, the Lahn is not really suitable to engage in the front and excel more on picking up fights in the sidelines. Her ability to glide, however, gives her a fairly unique and niche role in Node Wars, from bypassing enemy front lines and picking up key targets from the back, to jumping above barricades and demolishing key building units and disrupting fort repairs. Onto the Lahn's succession, and she became a lot better in low AP spots while maintaining her capability on grinding in high AP areas. She did lose a lot of her healing skills, but she got more damage, which pretty much balances that one out. 1 vs 1 and she's still a good dueler, but losing that grab makes her somewhat weaker, as she will need to find a different way to engage her enemies. Large scale, however, and she is absolutely amazing. She got a lot of protective abilities and super armors that she can tank a group of players while not dying. And as usual, she has her glide ability that lets her go in the middle of the fray very fast and let her go out at the same time once her skills are in cooldown. Her CC is also pretty disruptive, as her AoE range is simply amazing, making her such a fun class and great class in Node Wars as long as you are not outgeared by your enemies. Next up, we have the Sorceress, the user of the dark arts. The Sorceress originated from the town of Tarif in Media, using an amulet and a talisman to utilize dark energy and fuel her attacks. At Awakening, she becomes Death Incarnate herself, using a scythe to cut down her enemies. She was well known due to her iframes, making her very difficult to catch, but the nerf in stamina has limited her iframe capabilities. In low-end PvE, the Sorceress is pretty average as her mobility is more focused for a battle in a limited area, rather than being able to move in between large distances. In high-end PvE, she was once the top farmer in Histria, but the Violation nerf hurts her damage output a lot, resulting to other classes being able to close the gap with the Sorceress. But even with that nerf, she is still one of the top classes in high-end areas, as her high sustained DPS is above average compared to other classes. In 1 vs 1 PvP, the Sorceress is definitely one of the top classes, even if she does not have a grab. Her iframes are more than enough to find an opening to knock down the enemies and then do massive damage afterwards. In large-scale PvP however, the nerf on its stamina has pretty much limited the Sorc's ability to survive in the front lines. She still does do great damage from time to time if she finds a good spot, but can't really survive for that long to deal those damage. Her ultimate black hole though is still the best there is, making the Sorceress always valuable in group gameplay and ranking her higher. Going with the succession, and you will see the Sorc retain her PvE capabilities. Her movement may have been limited a bit after missing some dashes from her Awakening kit, but overall, she is still very good farmer and is absolutely a top class in high AP spots due to her raw damage post-Violation nerf. In PvP, and Succession Sorc I must say is even better than her Awakening. Her skills are mid-range and can be used in between iframe, making her very safe from being countered. Although Awakening has much more potential, but the simplicity of the Succession kit offers safer options to attack and not relying much to your ping in order to not get hit while attacking. Same is true in large scale, in which I prefer the Succession Sorc more. But either way, whatever you choose, both Path of the Sorceress offers some of the best PvP kits in the game, so long as you utilize your iframes well. Going back now to melee classes, the next one we have on our list is the Musa, another class originating from the east, wielding a blade and a hornbow as main weapon and a crescent blade in Awakening. He is one of the classes that is constantly spinning and attacking enemies in 360 degrees AoE around him. This, plus the dashes, gives Musa a perfect score in low-end PvE grinding, being the fastest to move from pack to pack no matter the distance, and melting enemies around him when he arrives. He is a little bit slower in high-end areas as he needs a little bit more AP compared to other classes, but still one of the top classes out there. He is literally on fire in PvE wherever he goes. In PvP, Musa is fairly average, or maybe slightly below average class depending on who is playing. The super armor dashes keeps you safe while trying to find an opening, but he is also full of opening himself. He does not have a grab, making it a bit difficult engaging other super armor classes, but again, Musa just zips around while waiting for that perfect opportunity to launch his own CC and can easily sidestep while he dashes. His offhand weapon also complements his dash, giving him a ranged CC. It is not used like how Ranger and Archer has used their bow, but it has its own utility. In large-scale PvP, the Musa is known to go towards the enemy backlines and unleash fires of hell. His protected mobility makes him one of the best classes that can easily bypass front lines to mow down key targets on the backlines. His damage and AoE can easily disrupt a lot of enemies and can net him a lot of kills as long as you are careful enough not to get CC as well. The succession path of the Musa is one of the rare update which lowers his PvE capability, as he lost his crescent blade, which in turn lost his very popular spin to win gameplay. He is still a great class though, both in low end and high end areas, as his mobility is not lost, but it's uncomparable on how he can farm in low AP areas with his flaming spear. In high end PvE, this succession Musa can do better in spots like Histria or Star's End, but fares worse in places like Akman compared to his Awakening form. He fares better though in 1 vs 1 PvP, due to his raw damage output, which is compressed in a single area unlike his Awakening form. He has higher damage but still need to find that opening while zipping around. While in large scale PvP wars, then he is also worse compared to the Awakening, as the main reason why Musa is so good in those large fights are due to his huge AoE range and knockdown skills alongside it, which you lost with succession. Yes, they do deal more damage, but they are just not as effective as they were during Awakening. Our next class is the Maehwa, which is the female equivalent of Musa, using the same blade and hornbow as main weapon and a carry spear in Awakening. While the Musa is a flaming spinner, the Maehwa is your icy queen that will stab her enemies 1,000 times. She also got the protected dashes, giving her a lot of mobility in and out of combat. But in low end PvE, this mobility could not really compensate much on her limited conical attack pattern, which is only directed in front of her. In high end PvE on the other hand, the Maehwa does better job with attacks that can shred through the high defenses of the enemy mobs. Also in high end spot, it will have more chances in grouping up the enemies in front of her compared to low end spots where most will die in one hit before she can reposition herself to hit more. In 1 vs 1 PvP, Maehwa needs a lot of mastery in the class toolkit to be effective. Yes, she can melt through the shields of other classes, but Musa can directly bypass those from the back with all the desync happening. Maehwa also has difficulty against iframe classes, while Musa has slightly better time with them. Maehwa has larger damage though, and if you can land CC, then Maehwa can simply do devastating damage. But trading SA is not really her forte, making it difficult to execute. The large scale war is another Maehwa's weakness. They also has the ability to go directly in enemy backlines, but her limited AoE lets her attack a pretty limited number of people. She's still a very fun class to play, but will really need some knowledge in the game in order to play effectively. Now going on with her succession path, she has given up the spear and blooms back to wield the blade and bow. Her low end PvE grinding speed is much faster now with better AoE range and lateral movements, which she was not capable in doing in Awakening form. Not much has changed in high end spots, as Maehwa can still induce huge damage to those high DP mobs. A very great class indeed in PvE. Not as great as the Awakened Musa, but still top tier. Nothing has changed so far with her PvP capability in both 1 vs 1 scenario and in large scale. She still zip in and out trying to land that sweet CC, but needs to be very careful with her dashes as the stamina nerf has also affected her. Alright, now onto our ultimate assassin classes. The first one we have is the ninja. As the name implies, the ninja is a master of stealth, able to blend into the shadows and launch sudden attacks to assassinate his enemies. He wields a short sword as main weapon while preferring a shuriken over a kunai in offhand. In Awakening, he will have the Shura Katana, which is simply 9 different swords at his disposal. In PvE, the ninja is not good in both low end and high end spots. He does have the mobility to move fast, but the AoE is very mediocre to hit the enemies efficiently. He also has the burst damage, but not enough to sustain it in high end spots. But with his weakness in PvE, the ninja compensates heavily in 1 vs 1 PvP. He is the ultimate assassin, and it just shows in 1 vs 1 scenario where a ninja just overpower all other classes. He has the block jump that can easily teleport the ninja behind an enemy and can use a grab directly after it. He also has the damage to burst down any classes and capable of stealth, making the ninja top tier even after the nerf he received in 2019. In large scale PvP, like other assassin type characters, he is more better in picking up 1 vs 1 or even 1 vs X fights on the sidelines, and can occasionally go behind enemy back to kill key targets. But its usefulness to infiltrate is limited as he does not have that huge burst of consistent dashes to safely engage the backlines. He is a fast runner, but not fast enough to avoid the enemy front lines. Still, the ninja does well on to speak of, and is a great scout with his stealth ability. This succession update for the ninja make him stop pretending as the samurai assassin and goes back to becoming a full-fledged ninja. As a result, he does a lot better in both low-end spots and high-end spots due to his better AoE skills, and can outfarm his Awakening counterpart a lot more. In 1 vs 1, he is still king of the hill with crazy iframes. There was a lot of nerf in his PvP damage, and will need a lot more input now in order to be efficient as he loses his crazy damage dealing skills, while nothing has changed much on a large scale PvP as he is still more of a skirmisher and a scout. The Kunoichi, which literally means a female ninja, is the female equivalent of ninja in BDO. She uses the same short sword as her male counterpart, but prefers a kunai more than the shuriken. In Awakening, the Kunoichi acquires the Chakram, which looks like a big hula hoop of death, giving the Kunoichi the ability to have its own version of Spin to Win, dishing out huge damage while healing her at the same time. This ability gives her better low and PvE advantage over the ninja due to its AoE, but still a far cry from the capability of the top classes. In high-end PvE, she still does better with better resource management from her Spin to Win heal, but again considered to be just average grinder. Again, what the Kunoichi lacks in PvE, they nail it in 1 vs 1 PvP. They all have the iframes and grab of the ninja, but has way more ways to CC her enemies. Against male counterpart though, she comes a little bit lower, but she is there on top against all other classes. In large scale PvP, the Kunoichi is in a better spot than a ninja, with her crowd control skills being somewhat useful. She can't initiate directly, but can definitely help the main group with her mid-range spinning wheels that can disrupt enemy charges. This also lets her be on the backline and protect it from classes that may come in with her great 1 vs 1 capability. Now, taking a quick look on Kunoichi's Succession version, like most classes, she got a lot easier time in PvE and is extremely fast. This is true for both low end and high end, making her a very fast grinder. And again, this improvement in PvE capability does not really affect her 1 vs 1 PvP advantages, where she still comes on top. She does needs to utilize her movement well, unlike her Awakening kit which can tank damage from time to time, but those auto-target fox claws are disgusting in PvP. However, her large scale capability is now on par with the ninja, as she lost her mid-range CC attacks and that very useful spinning heal. The next class on our list is the Berserker, a class under the Giant's race. The Berserker wields human-sized dual axe, which they replace with a hand cannon with the help of the dwarves during Awakening. A very tanky class indeed. The Berserker charges towards the thick of the battlefield with no regards to his enemies. In PvE, the Berserker is a pretty average class in both low-end and high-end spots. They have the damage and the mobility, but they are just in the middle or just above average grinder. They are very popular though as speed hackers, but seriously, don't follow those guys or else you might get banned. In 1 vs 1, the Berserker is a great class. They have a grab that makes Wrestling Mania a child's play, and if you have the gear, then your enemy will most likely be knocked out from a series of those smackdowns, although the CC change has kinda limit this insane ability. Same is true for large scale PvP. He is naturally tanky and have high health, enabling him to go in and deal some damage while tanking damage at the same time. A Berserker with an ultimate in a tight spot, such as a castle entrance, also means a death sentence to those who tries to infiltrate. He is a very fun class to play with and easy to use, but difficult to master. Going now to the Berserker Succession, and I think many would agree that this has to be the worst succession yet and in dire need of major buff. He is just an average grinder in low-end spot, and fairly decent, and maybe can outgrind the Awakened Berserker in high-end areas. However, he is in a really bad spot in PvP, either in 1 vs 1 or large scale, and is just too slow to catch up from other classes. Unlike in the early days of VDO, before Awakening came out, that the Berserker can just tank out damage while unleashing his AoE skills in the middle of the enemy, it is no longer possible with today's gear that can melt him very fast. He also lost his range skills, and with all skills being in melee, being in naturally slow class is not a good sign for him. And lastly, we have the newest class at the moment, which is the Guardian. And damn, she easily replaces the Valkyrie and the Berserker's role in the game. She uses an axe and a shield in her base form, while using a Jerdun in Awakening, which is a huge polearm. After her Awakening was released, she immediately became the star in BDO, and although there have been several nerfs on her ability, but it is not enough to keep the Guardian from shining. She is a slow class in both Awakening and Succession, but holy hell is her protective damage and massive AoE that is out of this world. Not to mention the insane sustain she has from most of her burst skill, and we have a winner. In low-end PvE, the Guardian can literally melt enemies by just running past them, while in high-end spots, she has enough burst damage skills that she can cycle, as those things has insane low cooldown compared to the AoE and damage that it can induce. The shift key in fact is very strong that people who wants to initiate PK simply dies together with the mobs when she uses this skill. In proper 1 versus 1, she might be on a disadvantage as she is indeed slow, but just a small miscalculation from enemy side and the Guardian can severely punish and can even go for a kill. While in large scale where there is a lag fiesta, and there you have the Guardian with super armor in the middle of the enemy pack and just unleashing her skill without care for the world. She has the burst in movement with her dash that has a forward guard, while her Phoenix form Infernal Nemesis makes her entirely invincible while traveling. And again, God Incinerator, which is a low cooldown, super armor, burst damage dealing and debuff making skill, all the while healing the Guardian, and it's no wonder it can incinerate any of the BDO's god with this skill, how much more us which are just mere mortals. Her charge skill can also one-shot squishy characters like Archer, in which the charge time can be removed by the Guardian's Q buff. Anyway, you got the idea, and this is the reason why Guardian currently is one of the best classes in game aside from her 1 versus 1 capability. Now moving on her succession path, and you will still have the Guardian being such a great class. However, due to how her awakening form is just so great, it makes her succession looks weak in contrast, which is not entirely true. PvE capability might be slower, with lesser damage compared to awakening, but still a very solid class and can pull great numbers wherever she goes. In 1 versus 1 PvP, and not much has changed. She is still slow but can easily punish enemies' mistake. While in large scale, she is not that good compared to her awakening form, but she does trade her damage with great utility skills, which is always good to have in group PvP. Also, her ultimate deals so much damage with an almost instant effect, making her very dangerous. And so that's it for now. Which class are you planning to play? Tell us in the comment section below, and see you soon on our next video. Peace!